You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to the middle of the week. Oh, by golly, it's Wednesday. You know what that means? We got to hear from the camel. Play me some camel.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woohoo! It is hump day. You are halfway to the weekend, y'all. Halfway there. Oh, my word. We're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. And, oh, by the way, that would be JP pushing buttons on the board. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good enough.
Yeah. Better than you deserve?
Sure. Well, I have a friend who always says, you ask him, how you doing, man? I'm too blessed to whine. Okay. Yeah, all good. All good here. All right, man. Hey, we got by the way, in this golf weather.
I know it. It's tempting.
It's not that tempting. You stay right there where you are. All right, hey, we got a great show laid on for you. You know the deal, y'all. On Wednesdays, in conjunction with the Camel, we also bring in a regular segment called the Grand Council. I've got my two friends, Jeff Poore and Dale Jackson, who have their own radio shows in different parts of the state. And we just ping each other with questions and see where the chips may fall. It gets pretty lively sometimes. That's the Grand Council today with Jeff Poore and Dale Jackson at 4 o'clock. And then I still got a triple dipper just filled up with stuff. Hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as you run today's show. So first out the gate, peacemaker. So, not to be confused with the cult peacemaker, but yeah, peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's scriptural. That is a big difference between that. There's a big difference between that and peacekeeper. All right, so peacemaker, not the same as a peacekeeper. What we're watching with Russia and Ukraine right now is peacemaker. I'll tell you all about it. That's number 1 on the Triple Dipper, peacemaker. Number 2, culling the herd. All right, so we are apparently culling the herd right now. There are any number of federal agencies that are seeing the reduction in force that the the Trump administration said that it would follow through on, and it is. Now, some of them you look at and go, well, nobody's got a problem with that. All the DEI people, sorry. USAID, sorry. But then there are some you look at and go, wow, that's painful. We'll talk about these and get your thoughts on it. Kind of a follow-up to yesterday's conversation. This one's called Culling the Herd, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, the end of transmania. Is it? Are we seeing the demise, the fizzle out, the final flaming, destruction of transmania? I don't know. But I tell you what, we're definitely winning. I had that conversation with Yaffe on his show today. We are definitely winning. Number 3 on the Triple Dipper. I'm going to give you some news on this. End of transmania. All right, well, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue. And I'll remind you guys that, every single day, attorney Stan McDonald, he is indeed the sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. And I'll tell you more about Stan McDonald here in just a few minutes. All right. So there's a lot of talk in the news today about federal employees. Yes, I'm going there again. I have to. You know, it's amazing to me this is where we are. On the one hand, private sector employees and owners of small businesses are sick and tired of feeling like government employees don't understand the economic realities that come from having an organization that is oversized and inefficient. At the same time, there are a bunch of folks who serve honorably in government service who somehow feel persecuted, unappreciated for quietly going about their work every single day in the employment of our government. Okay, those two perspectives are not mutually exclusive. We have a right to feel that government's too big. They have a right to feel their job is at risk for no reason of their own doing. But there's a sector in the middle that doesn't get it at all. There's a sector that has descended into the world of griping and complaining because they don't feel they should have to answer to anyone. And that, my friends, is a dangerous and unproductive mindset. Well, I say all this in the wake of yesterday's show, in which it became kind of a viral moment as listeners took sides on the questions of whether or not government employees should have to answer an email telling them their high points for the past week. This morning at 6 a.m., I got an email from one of our listeners. I won't say his name. I will tell you this, we've dialogued back and forth on email, and generally speaking, while we had differing of views on certain parts of it, we were also in agreement. But this listener first expressed to me that he listens to the show regularly, he has years of military service, and he's now a GS employee at Redstone Arsenal. Okay. He then proceeded to tell me how beset he and others feel by the request for the email. They feel degraded somehow by yesterday's show. They feel that they're under threat, being given orders by their local command structure not to respond, and ask what my position was on whether they should defy local orders they say they've been given to not respond to the DC request. Now, he may have been surprised, but I already responded to him this morning. And this is what I said. I'm going to read you exactly what I said to him. I said, first of all, thanks for your service, in uniform and out. I said, I have a family that's filled with folks who serve or have served in the civilian ranks of government. And what you described in your email is not accurate. There's a great level of dissatisfaction in the private sector, I said, with the notion that employees in the GS sector shouldn't have to respond to an email requested and supported by their president/commander-in-chief. I said, you and I both know that the only orders that should not be followed are those that are immoral, unethical, or illegal, but being popular is not one of the criteria for choosing not to respond. That said, I said, if you are receiving mixed signals from your superiors, then your role as a subordinate leader is to seek clarity. It also means that you may have to set aside emotion and not misinterpret every dissenting viewpoint as being a threat to you, because they're not. And then I said, me personally, I say answer the email. Send it to your own boss. Let him or her collect them and be the one who decides whether or not to forward it up the chain. If you're proud of your work, I said, and you can report it in generality without compromising matters of national security or personnel data or contract negotiations, then send the comms and let your boss decide whether to put the rounds downrange. Doing nothing is never an option, I said. And then I ended by saying, thanks for your service, thanks for listening, I hope you'll stay in the ruffian community. Look, here's the thing. Years ago, when I was a young lieutenant training at Fort Benning, Georgia, several of us got sick and tired of being sick and tired. It was not necessarily the training, the sweat, or the long hours, but more about the sour attitudes that were beginning to develop as all the infantry training shaped our every fiber. A bunch of Joes in boots and filled with testosterone, we can always find something to gripe about, right? It becomes an art form if you get down to it. Complaining can be done on an epic scale when you're in that kind of locker room style environment. Sometimes it can be funny, like a total hoot. Complaining can be downright, hilarious, but sometimes the griping and the whining gets old. And in my platoon at that particular point, it had reached an epic scale. It was complaining about food, about weather, about leadership. Everything was met with complaints. But then a group of us, we got tired of it all, and we made a pact in my platoon that anyone caught openly complaining had to buy a round for the others in the group. And others took note, and it began to change some of the tone in our platoon. Our standing rule became, you're allowed to make a statement of fact, but that true complaining was not allowed. And it was a good move. Not always successful, but it was a good move for us then. Look, when we kicked off Rightside Radio 4 years ago, I said up front that my goal was not to become one of those shows that just sits around and complains. God knows I could. There's always something to complain about, right? As a conservative and a former elected Republican, I've got what I refer to as a target-rich environment out there for complaints. But I hope you've taken note that on this show, we will try to laugh, sometimes at ourselves, and then we'll try to tell you why the sun is still going to rise tomorrow. And we'll take the time to point out the good with the bad. So the Biden era is behind us, right? Having said all that, the Biden era is behind us. And for many of us, that is a relief. But elections have consequences. And there's a new sheriff in town. And like it or not, he's actually the one in charge. And in a year filled with things that we could complain about, I've got to tell you that I've also seen some high points. They're there. Pay attention. They're real. There have been some moments of brilliance. And I can also tell you for a fact that, yes, I've had some great government employees in my family. People who served in the federal GS ranks, the military, state government, elected officials, educators, all in my family, all drawing a government paycheck. I can also attest to several times when government employees did something that dramatically blessed my life. I had one lady who I know for a fact helped save my military career when the Army Human Resources Command didn't have my paperwork straight. I had another one who insisted that the backlog of promotions get straightened out so that my promotion to full colonel would not fall out of line based on time alone. I once had a situation where a family vacation trip that was scheduled after one of my deployments was almost cut short because my birth certificate couldn't be located. It was lost somewhere in Army records. My birth certificate. I literally had to call back to New Jersey, where I was born, at a former Army installation, and find somebody, anybody, who knew where the records were kept from the archives of a place that no longer existed. And this one sweet lady made it her mission in life to ransack the archives of Monmouth County, New Jersey, find my birth certificate, actually FedEx it to my hotel so my wife and I could take a much-needed trip together after me being gone in the war zone for a year. Look, those were all examples of above and beyond behavior by government employees who did more than they had to do, and they did it without complaint. It is also worth noting that each one of those moments were one government employee having to fix the mess made by other government employees. But they didn't complain. They didn't post ugly things on their social media. They didn't run to CNN or MSNBC or call their union reps for assistance. They did their job because it was the right thing to do, and they did it with excellence. And I'll be honest with you. If a day later, after each one of those things had been done that blessed me, if a day later those same government employees who had blessed me and my family by doing their jobs with excellence were asked by their supervisor to list 5 things in an email they had accomplished, I'm going to bet they would have proudly said a whole paragraph about what they did for some guy named Phil Williams. And they wouldn't have complained. And they wouldn't have griped. And they wouldn't have whined that an email is hard or that you have no business asking that. They would have proudly typed out that email and hit send with an air of satisfaction because they're the kind of folks who are proud of what they've done and they knew that it was worth telling somebody about. All said and done, my point is that complaining doesn't do any good. We can always complain. It's the doing of things that makes the difference. And I'm going to make a commitment to you that I will always endeavor to keep this show in such a manner that it's not just a 3-hour gripe session. But to be sure, I will always tell you statements of fact that I believe are worthy of note. So here's my worthy of note point today. Anybody can complain. Anybody can gripe. But in the end, it's the doers that find their way through the storms to the clear skies on the other side that really set the agendas. So there ain't no use in complaining, my friends. Answer the freaking email. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Yeah, bottom line is this. If you're proud of what you did, send it. If you're not proud of what you did, or you're just a complainer, then we'll figure that out real quick, because this whole situation it's a checking the pulse of our government service employees. Are you there? Say so. It's not hard. At the same time, there are wonderful people in government service who I know are proud of what they do. So tell somebody. And at the same time, if your boss is telling you don't send it, then send it to your boss and make them be the one who decide not to send it in. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Man, pulling pins on truth grenades. I have to let that one play. I'm probably getting us in trouble, some kind of marketing rights or something by playing it longer.
You got to honor the food.
That's right. Honor the foo. Taylor Hawkins, rest in peace. I got a bunch of text. I knew it happened. I got a bunch of text messages about that monologue. I'm going to get to them momentarily. Let me just tell you guys again, text lines, they are open, 833-687-4448. That is the number. Text it or call it for both. But I wanted to remind you guys that Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of the Right Side Way monologue. Stan McDonald, he's a partner at the law firm of Wilmer & Lee out of Huntsville. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law. And listen, I know Stan personally. I was actually texting with him earlier. He's an amazing guy. Not only is Stan the kind of guy who will advocate for your legal needs, but y'all, he has been in the mix, in the fray for years in all the things that right side ruffians care about. I'm talking politics and cultural issues, all of it. So attorney Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He can stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say that if Stan McDonald is on your side, you will have no greater friend. Likewise, your enemies would have no greater foe. So here's his phone number. I'm about to give it to you. You ready? Stan McDonald. Law firm is Wilmer & Lee. He's an America First family man, an attorney, and his number is 256-479-3020. That's 256-479-3020. And do me a favor, tell him you heard about it on Right Side. Thank you very much, which he's told me, by the way. And then I got to do the thing. Oh, yeah, remind me. No representation made the quality of legal source to be performed as greater than the quality of legal source to be performed with other lawyers. That was a good one.
That was all right.
Text lines are blowing up. I think it's the monologue. So what you got?
Well, I was going to say before you get into text, we had a comment on the Twitter live stream from Joe. He said, I guess in response to your monologue, said, because you have common sense. So there you go.
Well, thank you very much, Joe.
I bet it's because you talk about how you don't complain and you try, so.
I could complain. I could have some epic complaints.
Yeah.
Alex Mathis texting in saying, Colonel, one of the things that I particularly enjoy about your show is the fact that as often as you possibly can, when you make a complaint, you look for a solution. Oh, man. Thank you, Allie. It says, cranky conservatives do no good for the cause. Thank you for making us laugh, think, and pray. The best is yet to come. Allie, you're awesome, as always. Robert from Harvest says, Phil, most of the discussion I've heard relative to the email in question addresses the first half of the message, that being, give 5 bullet points of what you have accomplished. The second half of the email is seldom included, that being, or it will be considered that you have resigned. I think it's the second half that has people concerned. Not if they answered the first half. At that point, the second half doesn't matter. So, yeah. John from Huntsville. Phil, spectacular monologue. Also, Phil, did you see that apparently there's a Canadian petition to revoke Elon Musk's citizenship and it has more than 250,000 signatures? By the way, JP, I was incredibly wrong about Alabama losing last night.
Yeah, you were. Big time.
But he still has Duke winning March Madness.
We'll see.
Okay.
Well, I didn't even know Elon had Canadian citizenship.
I didn't either. Does he ever go to Canada?
I don't see why he would, or why he would anymore.
Shoot. Well, if they become the 51st state, he won't need citizenship.
Yeah,
He'll already
exactly.
have it.
Yep.
All right, I got somebody. I got a couple of y'all that are saying, please don't use my name because it's a thing. That this one particular person from Harvest says, well, that monologue reminded me of why we need term limits. We also need to flush much of the bureaucracy. Spot on today, Phil. So glad you're on the right side. Well, thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. And then another one says, as one who was a contract software engineer, I was required to submit a weekly report concerning what I had done. Yup. There you go. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. More of that. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes from Huntsville all the way back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. Y'all, I'm talking about all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, even big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Text lines, I got to get a few more of those and keep caught up. Kano from Layton, Alabama, wants to make sure that I know. Hang on a second. What do we got here? There's something about an event. I tell you what, we'll take a look at that text. I'm not sure what it is, so before I read it out, I better double check that. Tom with all the, no, not that one. I won't do that one. I just realized some of these things are saying, hey, don't read out this part. Y'all are killing me with this. Don't you know I go in real time? Wiley from Gunnersville. Thank you. Phil, great monologue. Just wanted to comment that I spent 12 years at Redstone Arsenal as a contractor. The site manager that I worked under is a liberal Democrat. He hated all things email. Phone calls and in-person conversation were his preferred method of communication. Email could hold him accountable, but he could try to weasel out of the others. Just my personal experience of time spent working on a government installation under a liberal. Yeah, they exist. I mean, listen, they exist everywhere. They're in the Pentagon. I mean, everybody has a right to their own viewpoint, right? And so, Wiley, thanks for the text. I am not surprised to find out that there are localized leaders who are either A, expressing slow your roll on the response because you work in a classified environment, and remember what your parameters are when it comes to disclosing things over the NIPRNet, the non-secure internet. And then at the same time, there are others who have an agenda of their own, and they don't want Trump to succeed, and they're trying to drag all their employees into their negativity with them. Don't be a part of it. But my point that I said earlier to the individual who emailed me this morning, if you say that you support the Trump administration and you got this email and you're not ashamed of what you do for a living, but your local boss is saying maybe not send that, then just send the email to your local boss so that if they ever do come around and say, all right, we did not get a response from you, you can say, well, I sent it to my boss. He said he was going to send it forward to you or not. And then it's not on you. But listen, ain't nothing going to hurt by sending it. And you can do it in generalities. That's all there is to it. Almost tired of saying it. One of our listeners, whose name I shall not read out, says, heck yeah. He said, good idea with that stuff. Can't be talked about. Had no issues coming up with 6 bullets. Sent my email, no problems. Common sense is my superpower, he said.
Well, did you see the lady, the federal employee that called into the Breakfast Club, which is Charlemagne the God, his show,
yep.
and said how she was all for this email because it gives her a chance for a promotion.
That's
and
right.
Gives her a chance to brag about what she's doing, and basically said if you're a federal employee and this is too big of an ask for you, then you need to look for something else to do, pretty much. It's funny, how many. I think the exaggeration from the media is a lot bigger and not proportionate to the actual federal employee response.
It's turned into a clickbait story.
Yep.
And it's really not. But liberals need something to scream about. This is mean. It's not mean. I mean, apparently you've never run a business. Tony from Franklin, Tennessee says, listening all the way from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Love it, sir. Man, Tony, appreciate you. Thank you very much. Rockasans. John from Brownsboro says, send the email to your boss, then reply to the president's email saying you are indeed alive and well, still doing your job, however you were instructed not to comply, and refer them to your boss if they need your full reply. Therefore, you have complied to both orders somewhat and remove yourself from the equation. John, you are indeed a sage of wisdom. Thank you very much. And then Cameron from Decatur says, Phil, try to act surprised when you get the call to replace Bongino. I will not be surprised, but I will be blessed. We'll see what God does. And by the way, one of our listeners who said don't say his name, and they go checked back in again. He said, I've had different bosses over the years. Some wanted a weekly sit rep, others did not. Shouldn't be a big deal. Just tell them what you did that week. There you go. All right, let's change the subject here. All right, because I have a feeling this one could go viral and take over the show again. And we're going to talk about it a little bit, kind of we're going to cover this in a second dipper of the day, culling the herd. But let me jump into a story that is at the other side of the top of the news. All right, Russia, Ukraine. By the way, what you are seeing right now is history. And let me start off by opining on something that I put a brief commentary about on my social media this morning. By the way, you can follow me on X at @SinPhilWilliams. You can also follow me on Facebook. And I encourage you to do so because we also live stream the show in those places. But here's the thing. Peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers. You've heard that. It's scripture. Blessed are the peacemakers. It did not say, blessed are the peacekeepers. In the parlance of the world, and I do believe it matches what Scripture is talking about, in the parlance of the world, the peacemakers and the peacekeepers are two different things. Peacekeepers, how many times have we heard about, like for instance, I have a family member that did a peacekeeping tour in the Sinai Peninsula in the U.S. military. Do you know we still have troops there? We do. The Sinai Peninsula, peacekeeping operation. What is that? That is one group that stands in between two other potentially warring groups and tries to keep them from smacking each other down. Those are the ones that try to stand in the middle and prevent the outbreak by standing in the middle. And that's what they do. They're constantly like this, stiff. You can't see what I'm doing. They're stiff arming back and forth. Don't do that. Don't do that. You can't do that. I'm meeting with you to talk to you about not doing that. Don't do that. And they're trying to enforce something that is already in writing, that has already been agreed to, that the parameters for which have already been set. They're just peacekeepers. The peacemakers, blessed are the peacemakers. The peacemakers are the ones who get people to come to the table who don't want to make peace, but they will because they've been told they have to come to the table. That is where we are right now. The Biden administration's foreign policy was largely built on the notions of appeasement and containment. Appeasement and containment, which, by the way, is a horrible foreign policy position. Appeasement, meaning try to pacify somebody, try to appeal to their nature, try to give them something so they'll please leave you alone. Don't be mean. And so you give them something. You're appeasing them. Containment is just where you try to sort of keep them inside their own borders. And can you just stay over there? Just stay over there. Just stay over there. That's containment and appeasement. And those things are awful foreign policy. And you do not negotiate from strength if your whole outlay is designed around the notions of appeasement and containment. The Trump administration has a stated position of peace through strength. Peace through strength means you're a peacemaker, and you're not about appeasement and containment. You're about negotiation, but they all know the negotiation carries with it a big stick. This is a case of speak softly, not always. This is a case of speak softly and carry a big stick. That's where we are right now, and we should be, because we're the United States of freaking America. Why will we not negotiate like that? And peacemakers are the ones who step into the fray and they bring people to the table to make peace. Now, there's a lot of talk about what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and whether or not all of a sudden we're just like abandoning Ukraine and I just don't understand why would we do this? And I have some thoughts on that. You do? Yes, I do. Number one, we're not abandoning Ukraine. And number two, we're not suddenly appeasing Russia. I will tell you this, I think I said on the show the other day, that what we're watching is truly, it's almost like a mediation. Well, it is a mediation. It's called shuttle diplomacy. It's where the peacemaker shuttles between the parties. What are you going to do over here? We can talk to, okay, they're offering this. Can you do that? Can you do this? I'll tell you, here's your strengths and your weaknesses. You got to do better. All right, I'm going back to them. And they go back to them and they say, hey, here's what they said. And they responded this way and their counteroffer is, and can you do that? Listen, your strengths and your weaknesses are this. Vladimir Putin does not respond to someone calling him out on the world stage because he's a man who governs from a position of trying to save face at all times. And he knows he's screwed up with this war, and he knows he's losing value in his own circles back home. He knows his economy's in trouble, and he is not going to negotiate when he is being called a tyrant. And so suddenly the press is like, Trump won't call him a tyrant. Trump won't call him the aggressor. To what end? When you're trying to get the guy to the table to mediate, what is the point of making him look small? That's not going to work. Zelenskyy, on the other hand, Zelenskyy wants what we have. Zelenskyy wants more support. Zelenskyy is the underdog in this situation, who, by the way, I will say this. I'm a big fan of the way Ukrainian troops have been putting the wood to the Russians for the last 3 years. Give them some props. They have been the underdog, and they have been smacking Russia in the face at every turn. This war was supposed to be over in 5 days. We're in the 4th year right now. That being said, yes, Zelensky's getting called out hard, and he should, because he took money, took arms, wanted more, came over here and spoke to Congress, lobbying people for it. And there's a lot of people that believe that there was some measure of collusion with the Biden administration for personal gain. But there's also been no accountability. We sent billions of dollars, and we don't know where they all went. We deserve to have them give us an accounting. We're also watching him getting kind of put in his place. He was the wonderkind for a while. He was the guy who could do no wrong. Well, guess what? He's not. But the way you get him to the table is by making him feel like he's losing his edge, and so he's got to come to the table to show that he's the guy. All right. That's where we are right now. Peacemaker is making peace by appealing to the baser instincts and natures of the two warring factions. Putin is all puffed up and doesn't want to admit that he's a goob and he's a tyrant. So we're not going to call him that, because if we do, he won't come to the table. He's going to come to the table. At the same time, Zelenskyy has been all puffed up, believing he could do no wrong, and now we're pointing out to the world, you've done some wrong. You're not the wonder kid we thought you were. And if you want our support, you're going to have to do some things. And he's going to come to the table. In fact, reports are right now Zelenskyy will be in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Breaking news just a little while ago is that, yes, Zelenskyy is coming to the United States. Why? Well, here's the next piece. When I get back from this break, I'm going to tell you about chess versus checkers. Y'all, I'm giving you the straight skinny. When you have those water cooler conversations with people, when somebody says, what do you think about the war in Ukraine? You can say, listen, I got the full skinny on this, and here's how it lays out. I'm going to give you all the stuff for that conversation. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why this mineral deal with Ukraine is chess versus checkers. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, making common sense like a superpower. All right, so let me just keep this thread going here. The war in Ukraine and Russia. Let's keep in mind, we all know, the world all knows that Russia was the aggressor. Ukraine didn't say, hey, come fight us, please. That didn't happen. Ukraine didn't send a missile and then Russia had to respond. It wasn't like that. The bottom line is that Russia looked across the border and wanted what they saw. That's all it boils down to. Let's not forget, although most of the world has forgotten, that in 2014, Russia decided it wanted half of, or about a third of Ukraine, which was called the Crimean Peninsula. That was all of the warm water ports, basically, that the Ukrainian people had. Russia wanted warm water ports. Russia swears that there were a number of people of Russian descent who were trapped inside of Crimea, feeling like they were persecuted. They had to step in on behalf of those peoples. Bull crap. No, they didn't. Russia could care less about people's feelings. Russia burns its own people every single day. What really happened was Russia wanted what they saw. They saw it and they took it. And Obama and Biden said nothing. They just went, wow, that just happened. Anyway, next in the news, that's how that went. Crimean Peninsula, this would be like the lower half of Florida being taken away. And so the tension began to rise because whereas the world didn't want to say much because it wasn't sure what they should say to a big, scary Russia, which is now not near as scary, the big, scary Russia got away with taking the Crimean Peninsula. Fast forward a few years. Russia still wants more. Russia's economy's in the tank. Russia has a dearth of assets. They do have some natural gas and other assets they can sell, but they also look across the border and they recognize three things actually. Major nuclear power generation capability in Ukraine. Major agricultural capacity in Ukraine. They are the breadbasket of Eastern Europe. And then what's also been discovered is undeveloped, vast, untapped resources of minerals to include rare earth minerals, which are so crucial these days to making things like microchips and batteries and all of it. This is a game changer for Russia if they can get their hands on it. A lot of it is in eastern Ukraine, right on the Russian border. So what do? They decided they wanted it. And they created this whole pretext of, well, there's talk about them being in NATO. Yes, that's part of it. I agree. I think that is part of it. National security, that's their excuse, though. What really happens is they want what they saw. So they came across the border. You may have heard that we've got a deal going right now between Ukraine and the United States. Really? Yes, we do. I've got a piece I pulled here from the Kiev Independent. I went to a Ukrainian newspaper for this. I go there so you don't have to. Kiev Independent, dateline yesterday. Ukraine and U.S. reach an agreement on the minerals deal. Confirmed, by the way, by the Trump administration. We believe Zelenskyy is going to be in D.C. on Friday. Ukraine, this article from the Kiev Independent says, needs $524 billion for its recovery to rebuild after all the war. Ukraine has now reached an agreement with the U.S. on the minerals deal, confirmed by their deputy prime minister and Volodymyr Zelensky's office to the Kiev Independent. Confirmed again by the Trump administration. Ukraine has now secured more favorable terms than it originally had. That's okay. That's part of the negotiation process. Y'all, here's the deal. We can now go to the peacemaker mode and say, hey, listen, Russia, that whole thing you told the world you were really, really scared of, the idea that Ukraine would be a NATO member, we'll just go ahead and say they're not going to be a NATO member. You feel better? No more NATO member. Oh, by the way, did we tell you? We now have a contract with the United States and Ukraine for rare earth minerals, and you can't have them. And if you try to get them, that's like saying you want a vital national interest of America to be ceded to you, Russia, and we're not going to let that happen. So this is chess versus checkers. What just happened is, by going with what Russia said about NATO, we took that off the table. And we also, oh, by the way, the thing they didn't say, the minerals, we took that too. Because they've never openly said, we're here to claim the resources of Ukraine. What they said was, it's about NATO, it's about security. Okay, then we're taking that problem off the table. But guess what? You can't have those minerals that we know you really want, because they are now a joint venture between the United States and Ukraine. Ukraine will keep 50% of the proceeds developed from mining those rare earth minerals, and they will, by the agreement, be putting them back into investing in projects and restoration and renovation of Ukraine itself. And Russia, well, Russia doesn't get it. So now what's going to wind up happening is the United States leans into the table and says, hey, Vladimir, you know we didn't vote against you at the UN. Hey, Vladimir, you know we didn't call you a tyrant. Hey, Vladimir, those minerals over there, we're the ones under contract, so you're going to have to leave eastern Ukraine now. That's where this is headed. I'm telling y'all, this is genius. It's chess versus checkers, and that's a big, big deal. All right, listen, when we get back from this next break, I'm going to finish this up. I've got a section here from Scott Jennings on CNN. By the way, if you're not following Scott Jennings on social media, you need to. The guy, he literally becomes the sole voice of reason on CNN panels every day, and he spanks the liberals in such a way that they don't know what to do with him. And he's got thoughts on the CNN peace deal, or on CNN about the peace deal with Ukraine and Russia. I'll tell you about it in a minute. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on Hump Day. Going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. Just hang with us. We're halfway through the week. I'm still in this number 1 of the Triple Dipper, the Peacemaker. And if you missed the earlier part, I said that a peacemaker and a peacekeeper are 2 different things. And that what we're watching right now, blessed are the peacemakers, what we're watching right now are the efforts of the Biden, or excuse me, God, I'm so stuck in that. The efforts of the Trump administration to actually be a peacemaker, someone who brings people to the table and makes them make peace. As opposed to a peacekeeper who just stands there in the middle, putting their hands up going, y'all don't fight now. Y'all don't fight. You agreed. Remember you agreed. That's not where we are. It's been enjoyable to watch. By the way, I got an epic text. Ken from Harvest has texted in. He said, while I agree with you that Trump's foreign policy is analogous to chess, he said, I vehemently oppose the implication that the Biden administration's foreign policy was checkers. It says checkers does take some thought and strategy. The Biden foreign policy was more along the lines of tic-tac-toe, go fish, or even shoots and ladders. Or maybe Candyland. How about that? The Biden.
Hungry hippos.
Grab all the marbles you can.
Yeah.
I played a lot of Hungry Hippos
I
with
did
my
too.
kids.
I grew up on Hungry Hippos.
That was an angry game, too.
Yeah.
How many times did you slap it so hard you felt like you moved the board?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. By the way, when you were a kid, did they have battle tops?
I don't know what Battle Tops is.
Holy cow! Battle Tops was literally the hungry hippos of my day.
Oh, really?
Why am I talking about this right now?
I don't know.
Everybody had a little top. You wound the string on it. You put it in the sand, and then just like the same kind of thing. Hungry hippos. You have and you zip the string.
You're talking about Beyblades? That's what it was for me.
It's called what?
Beyblades is what you're referencing.
Beyblades.
BEY blades. I was a Beyblade collector, but it was like you said, you rip it and they like bounce off each other.
They would bounce off each other and then knock one out of the ring.
So that was called Beyblades when I was growing up.
Battle Tops. Battle Tops. It'll always be Battle Tops to me.
Like I said, I was a Beyblade collector. I loved it.
Nice. Beyblades. Okay. All right. I missed out on that. All right. Hey, Phil. Reel it back in. I'm sorry, squirrel.
Yeah.
But no, let's get back on topic. I got a soundbite here from Scott Jennings. All right. Scott Jennings from CNN. By the way, the guy he's on CNN. He appears to be a rock-solid conservative. He also appears to be a guy who could care less who's sitting next to them. He'll just say what needs to be said. So I got a clip here from Scott Jennings on a CNN panel, and I wish you could see the video because the rest of the panel is staring at him like he has 3 eyes because they can't believe what they're hearing. Go ahead.
I'm willing to give the new administration some latitude to try to enact the political will of the people of the United States, and that is for this to come to an end. The political will to continue to funding an open-ended engagement is draining rapidly. I think you would acknowledge that. And so Trump here is a new broker on the field and has a chance to do something amazing, and that is to get these 2 people to stop fighting, and in that case would bring some stability to the continent of Europe. And what he has to say publicly about Russia or Ukraine over the course of time, I guess I'm willing to give them some latitude if the ultimate result is this, what Pete Hegseth said initially, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine, those were his words. The United States strikes a rare earth mineral deal with Ukraine. I would love that. And the governments in Europe decide that they do need to take a little more responsibility for their own national security. If these are the outcomes and the killing stops, they ought to give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize.
Just Scott?
And the crowd, Yes, exactly. Yeah, Scott Jennings. I don't know where he came from, but all of a sudden he's like on my radar because he's nailing it.
And some people, he's from Kentucky. Some people want him to run for Mitch McConnell's open seat.
But then we lose him on the punditry world.
Yeah, it's true.
but I can still live with that, I think. All right, so here's the thing. He nailed it. There's a lot of angst. And by the way, it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I look at, okay, Trump gets out there. Yes, he's bombastic, and I know it. And he gets out there and he starts calling, Zelenskyy all kinds of names. And I feel like those names are better suited for Putin. I get it. And it bugs me. But then I also see, like this. I got a piece from Fox News. The United States votes against condemning Russia for Ukraine war as Trump administration chases a peace deal. So we're sitting there, in essence, siding with Russia, North Korea, and a couple of others in voting against a resolution backed by European allies to condemn Russia as the aggressor in the action at the UN Security Council. Why did we do that? We did it because it does no good for the peace negotiations right now. Everybody knows they're the aggressor. Why do we have to label it like that at this particular moment? All they were trying to do was poison pill the opportunity for further dialogue. So the U.S., first of all, voted against a portion of it and then abstained from voting against a competing resolution. The world is like, wait, what just happened? Why is the U.S. doing that? Well, if you can't figure out the chess match, then you don't deserve to be, there at all. He also made the point that it's causing Europe to have to step up. So I've got a piece here from Time magazine. Macron from France came to the White House just in the last few days. Have you noticed this? They're coming here, by the way. Macron came to the White House. Zelenskyy is apparently coming to the White House. French President Emmanuel Macron considers himself a Trump whisperer. He likes to try and, sort of season his comments in such a way, it says, and sort of try to sort of correct slightly on the overall narrative. Not really. You know what he wound up saying? He wound up saying that NATO countries in Europe are going to put $500 billion more into their own defense. How about that? How about that? Was that happening under Biden? No. The war broke out under Biden. Nobody was talking about peace under Biden. The Crimean Peninsula was lost under Obama-Biden. And now we've got, all of a sudden, Europe is going to step up to the plate a little more. Ukraine and Russia may be coming to the table, and we're getting a multi-$100 billion deal for minerals to help us recoup some of what we spent over there. Now, here's the other piece. Fox News, Dateline yesterday. Boris Johnson, the former UK Prime Minister, the guy with the hair. That's a rat's nest on his head, man. What is that?
I cannot stand that guy for many reasons. For many, many reasons.
The hair being one of them?
Yeah. The hair being the cherry on top of all the other reasons, yeah.
Yes. I don't like you for this, and this, and you have bad hair too. Yep. He's like he's got a constant bedhead going on. Yeah. All right, so Boris Johnson, though he is the UK former prime minister, he was doing an interview the other day on an organization, a show called The Story. And he was talking about the war in Ukraine, and he said that he believes that the European nations, to include the United Kingdom, need to provide what they call a deterrence force, which is the same thing as peacekeepers. We're not going to put American boots on the ground. That's not in the works. There is no intent right now to put American boots on the ground, but there will have to be somebody there watching over the territory and making sure there's no incursions, there's no sniping, there's no violation of the treaty. So we're looking right now at, he says, I think we need to go forward with a deterrence force composed of Brits, the French, and other European countries backstopped by the U.S. with intelligence support, but no American boots on the ground, he says. And Johnson also praised the idea of a rare earth mineral rights deal between Washington and Kiev, explaining it would commit the United States to the freedom, sovereignty, and security of Ukraine. Yes, it would. He also points out, rightfully, like I said earlier, that what we're seeing is Russia wanted that stuff, and now they can't get it. All right, that's plenty. That's a lot. Peacemaker. Remember, when you're talking to somebody, just go ahead and tell them, you know what I heard? Peacekeeper versus peacemaker. And blessed are the peacemakers is Scripture. Peacemakers bring people to the table, and that's where we are.
I'll just say about Boris Johnson, though.
Are you going back to that?
This war could have ended much, much earlier if he didn't throw a wrench in a potential peace agreement. I think it was like 6 months or so after the initial invasion. So, yeah,
I think that would have been in jeopardy, though, anyway, with Biden still in office, feeding the fame.
Yeah,
flames.
but yeah, exactly. I'm saying the Biden administration sent Boris Johnson to do its job and throw a wrench in that agreement. Then, so although a lot of what he said there is correct, anytime I hear him talking about the Ukrainian situation, I'm like, this could have potentially been over a lot sooner if it wasn't for you and that bedhead going in there messing stuff up. So.
Bedhead. All right, fair enough. Several text messages that I'll get to when we get back from this break. We're taking a break right now. We'll do that, and then we're going to come back and talk about culling the herd because, yes, we do know that some departments in the federal government are literally losing employees, and I'll tell you who they are. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just giving you all the truth you can slap on a bumper sticker. Going to get a few text messages. Big Al from Harvest says, in the childhood game, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, Trump is the red robot and Biden's the blue robot, and Trump is knocking his block off. Did you have Rock'em Sock'em Robots?
I personally didn't, but I've played with them a lot.
Those were the best.
Mm-hmm.
I was always jealous if somebody had it and I didn't.
One of my classrooms had it in there. One of my teachers had it in there that we would play with, yeah.
In your classroom?
Yeah, during our breaks we would play with it, yeah.
Nice. Tony from Franklin, Tennessee says, with Biden, it was Chinese checkers. Oh, I see what you did there with his payoffs, he says. That's awesome. Kano from Layton says, hang on a second. What do we got here? I tell you what, Kano, I'm gonna have to get back to your text, man. I apologize, but again, I haven't gotten a chance to read through it yet before I read out because it's talking about an event, and I'm not sure that I'm ready to read out about somebody's event. I don't do that just cold. So, but thank you for that. And he also, and by the way, Kano's saying, I realize you may not be able to read this on the air. Thanks, Kano. I appreciate that. Yeah, we are governed strictly, and we are a business, so we have to handle some things carefully. Lynn from Knoxville, Tennessee says, it's Lynn from Knoxville, but listening from Fort Hood. Yes, Fort Hood. That's right, the Hood. So I left Redstone when Biden came on board, but I'm 100% behind Musk. Thanks, Lynn, and thanks for your service. And by the way, in whatever capacity you're at Fort Hood, thank you for being there. I know they call it, is it Fort Cavazos now, I believe? I have family members that were stationed at Hood, and they said, well, you know why they did that? So they can call it Fort Cav, because that's where the 1st Cavalry Division is. And not only that, but the 3rd Cavalry Regiment is there. So anyway, Lynn, thank you. Appreciate you very much. Jeff from Indiana says, I find it kind of pathetic that our government workers have become so pampered they don't think they have to answer to their bosses. So I know in my world I had to answer to my boss, and if I didn't want to answer to my boss, I'd tell him to take his job and shove it, and I'd merely get to go on down the road because I have a desired skill that people are willing to pay for. I can have a job in 5 minutes. If you can't do that, you might want to question your worth as an employee because everyone's looking for good people. So, Jeff, your point's well taken. I will say this, Jeff, not to try to correct you, but I'm not going to broad brush every employee. There's some great folks out there, many of whom, like Lynn from Knoxville a minute ago, loves what's happening and probably sent her email in. So there's some good ones out there. The complainers, they are indeed a problem, and I suspect they would be a problem no matter where they were. You know what? That kind of grumbling tends to be something that travels with them. They need a course correction in life before they get a course correction in their job. All right, listen, we're going to change gears here in a minute, and I'm going to let me just stay on the thread of that text. This thing about government employees, there are true cuts, but I want to frame the discussion this way. I pulled a piece off the Daily Caller, Dateline today. Jobs rain down on the federal government while middle America watches private sector gigs vanish. It's true. The article points out that there's been a growing number of American private sector workers who've been laid off in recent years, while government workers have faced much lower layoff rates. In 2024, the layoff and discharge rate for all U.S. non-farm payroll jobs ranged between 1 to 1.1%, while the government layoff discharge rate was 0.3%. Great disparity. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the way. U.S. employers reported 761,358 jobs cut in 2024. Only 38,000 of those cuts were government, according to a January report from a firm called Challenger Gray and Christmas. In January of this year, 49,759 job cuts. Only 288 of those were government. According to a February report from that same Challenger Gray and Christmas firm, comparing that to January of 2021, U.S. employers cut 79,552 jobs. Only 19 of those were government jobs. What we're telling you there is the Biden years were great if you were in government. They were awesome. The private sector has been hemorrhaging employees over the last 4 years, while the government jobs never seemed to have a problem. Like apparently they never ran out of money for that, right? The fact is they really did. This one particular expert cited in the article said it's been an exceptionally low layoff rate for federal government these last 4 years. It's been lower than normal. It's even been lower compared to state and local governments. Their layoff rate is 50% higher than federal government. And employing federal workers is also much more expensive than employing private sector workers. The article points out the average cost for benefits at all levels of education was 43% higher in the federal employee than it was for private. So all that to say, keep in mind that what we're looking at is when you take it in its totality, the very difficult situation that some people are finding themselves in by losing a job, which I'm not minimizing it, I'm not mitigating it. It's real, it's tough. But the private sector has been dealing with it and bouncing back from it for years, while the public sector has been roughly immune by comparison. And yet it costs so much more to keep a public sector job in place because of all the union negotiated terms and benefits and wages. And so now we're down to the point that if we're going to say we're going to do something about this $36 trillion in debt, and oh, by the way, the bloating of federal government, if we're going to say that we're going to do something about it, there's only one way to do something about it. And that's to right-size government. And it's painful. It absolutely is painful. I acknowledge that it's painful. It's tough in the private sector too. It's painful. You hate when you have to let somebody go. You know what? It's easy when you let them go for cause, like when they screw up. It is hard when you have to let them go because you just don't have the ability to pay them. Or you watch them walk out the door because they can't get paid what they need. So all that to say, private sector does that as a matter of course, because that's what you do when you're running a budget-conscious, streamlined, efficient business. The government has not had that problem. In fact, the government sector has largely been protected according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what we're watching now is the right sizing of government. I'll tell you about who's losing jobs. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville Lake back on over to Chattanooga, from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden, all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, I do mean to say there is actual big old swatches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right, so I mentioned to you before the break that a report in the Daily Caller, which cites the Bureau of Labor Statistics, clearly indicates that the public versus the private sector in terms of layoffs, and by the way, there are times when layoffs and reduction in forces are just part of the natural course of events. It's not like like right now we have a policy of culling the herd, if you will. We have a policy of saying if there's a bloated department, if there are people not doing a good job, if there is a DEI office, if there is something related to the Green New Deal, all these and more, that we're doing away with it. But sometimes that just happens. Like I mentioned to you, in the beginning of this year, 49,000 jobs nationwide were cut. Only 288 of those were government. In January of 21, at the beginning of the Biden administration, 79,000 jobs were lost in January of that year. Only 19 of them were government. Of the jobs lost in all of 2024, which was 761,358 jobs in all of 2024, only 38,000 of those were government. What does that tell you? The private sector takes more risk. There's that. The private sector has to balance its budgets. The private sector has no choice but to make cuts, whereas the public sector, generally speaking, does not. But under the Biden administration, it was higher than normal. We have, for the last 4 years, watched the growth of government. And a part of that was because of, A, DEI becoming all the rage and then creating entire departments across the nation for DEI. And then there was the Green New Deal, the infrastructure, what do they call it? The infrastructure bill, what was the one that was called? Oh, the Build Back Better. You had the whole idea of the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of that poured money back into government. And they grew departments to deal with the agenda items, to include upfunding USAID incredibly. All right, so what's happened? Well, I got an article right here, and you know what was crazy? I had to go to a local news source to find the best recounting I could find of where the cuts are coming right now. So since the election and since the assumption of office by President Trump and his administration, we're watching as, yes, there are federal employees that are losing their jobs at a higher rate than normal. Let's talk about where they are. In the Department of Education, dozens of probationary employees, meaning they were still in their probationary status and they're let go. Dozens of probationary employees were let go on February 12th. In the Department of Homeland Security, 400 employee positions at DHS were eliminated. Half of those came from FEMA. Okay. A lot of those came from DEI offices. Department of Energy, 2,000 workers have been fired from the Department of Energy, including the National Nuclear Security Administration. That's interesting. I'm sure we could dig into why. How about USAID? Well, USAID, the fraudsters of all get out. I mean, USAID has been just a complete goat rodeo. USAID, 10,000 staffers placed on leave. Only 600 of them are still working in their existing roles. Those on leave are expected not to be brought back because it's being rolled into the Department of State. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that was the other major fraudster claim. 1,700 employee agency. Well, they were all on the chopping block, but they filed a court action and it is currently stayed, so they're on administrative leave right now. Department of Veterans Affairs, 1,000 employees fired from their role on February 13th. The EPA, oh boy, the EPA, fired 388 probationary employees. Department of Health and Human Services lost 700 workers from the Centers for Disease Control and thousands from the National Institute of Health and the Food and Drug Administration. I don't think anybody's crying over those. Department of the Interior. 2,300 people let go from the Department of Interior, approximately 800 of which were from the Bureau of Land Management. That was the hyper-regulatory departments that were making it difficult for farmers and oil drillers to do their thing. How about the Office of Personnel Management? 200 probationary employees were told they were let go. General Services Administration, 100 people laid off from GSA. Small Business Administration, 720 employees lost their jobs. That's a 20% reduction in that force at Small Business Administration. Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, 6,000 new and newly promoted Internal Revenue Service employees across the country were laid off on February 20th. 6,000. The layoffs began on February 20th, impacting roughly 6 to 7% of the agency's 100,000 person workforce. The main offices for that were in Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Tennessee, and New York. Department of Defense. The Pentagon announced on February 21st it will release some 5,400 civilian probationary workers beginning the following week and freeze hiring in the first wave of what could be a more than 70,000 fired employee base. I expect that will not go that high, near that high. They actually expect 5,400 probationary workers to be released in the initial run. So if you're a probationary employee with a DOD, then yes, you're on the chopping block. That is tough stuff. I am not going to try to pretend it's not. I take no glee in it whatsoever. I'm reading you the facts. That right there was a statement of facts. But I hope you saw that I caveated it by saying the bloating of government over the last 4 years and the inability of the Biden administration to recognize that it was bloating and the hemorrhaging of jobs in the private sector. This is a right sizing of government. This is also developing a new version of homeostasis, because we cannot sustain a growing government if the private sector is not on equal footing, because it's the private sector that funds the public sector. It just is. There are going to be the occasional revenue generators within government, but by and large, government runs on the dollars generated by the private sector. All that to say, if the private sector is overwhelmingly taking the hits in a bad economy, then the public sector is out of whack, and eventually there's going to be a right sizing or the whole thing flips over due to being top heavy. All right, now, is there anything in Alabama being affected? Sure there are. I will tell you that one of our liberals in the Alabama delegation, we have those? Yes, we do. One of the liberals is Congresswoman Terry Sewell. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, one of our 2 Democrats, is now just claiming she's up in arms. She tweeted out on yesterday, that her office received reports that more than 100 constituents at the Social Security Administration in Birmingham were unjustly terminated. Well, unjustly is a pretty broad-based statement, but I'm just looking at this and going, you know what? I can't explain it. If it's true, it's not confirmed yet. But the reality is, ask yourself why, and then tell me why it's unjust. Unjust.
It drives me crazy when they're trying to say because jobs are leaving, like it's a bad thing. Like, I get it, like people are losing their job, that sucks, but I feel like it's the part or the job of politicians to not have wasteful jobs. Like, I feel like just them saying that them taking away a job, quote, is a bad thing. It's like if the job is wasteful and doesn't help Alabama or the nation, then yeah, it should go away. Like, it just annoys me that they label as, you know, this action will take away this amount of jobs. It's like, well, then those jobs shouldn't have. Those jobs were, you know, wasteful. You know. Yeah,
they're either no longer necessary, or they weren't necessary to begin with, or we just can't afford to keep them. I mean, that's kind of where we're at.
I'm annoyed with the negative connotation that everything that takes away a job is bad. It's like, no, that's actually the job of the government, I would think. So
now some people are screaming about how it's going down. So a piece here I pulled off Fox, Dateline today. USAID, which is the one that's axing the most employees, USAID, their employees are given the 2 days of this Thursday and Friday to show up and get their stuff. And they'll be escorted in and escorted back out. They will not be allowed computer access. The real reason for that is they're no longer trusted. USAID was such a gluttonous trough of slop to fund liberal agendas. I mean, I've got an article, I think it's in my stack. There was a news report came out yesterday that a LGBTQ activist group in Great Britain is having to cut its staff because it lost its USAID grant. What are we funding a gay activist group in Great Britain for? Why are American taxpayers even doing that? Well, all that was coming from an environment of, it's like a culture of just kind of like corrupt, progressive agenda. Let's spend the money because it's not really ours anyway, and just pretend that it's all good. That's where we were at USAID. So USAID, their employees, according to this piece I pulled off of Fox, they've got this next couple of weeks, and they've got to get their stuff. And by the way, they have to bring their own box. They'll be escorted in and escorted out. I got a call with about a minute or so for the break. I'll take it real quick. Tom from Gurley. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Doing just fine. Yes, we do have liberals, and some of them are Republicans. Anyway, that article with Terry Sewell, I read somewhere today that she had to retract that because it's 100 people in the region, not Alabama. Yeah, there were some in Alabama, but it's a lot lower number than that.
Wow. No, that figures. I mean, what I've seen over and over again is that the liberal hyperbole is jump out there with a statement and worry about the facts later.
Facts? Don't let those get in the way.
Absolutely. Tom, thanks very much for the call. Appreciate you.
All righty.
That figures. That absolutely figures. One more piece before I go to the break, and then I may be done with this segment. Although I got to tell you, the whole chat logs at the NSA, did you see about that? That's kind of gross. I may talk about that after the break.
Kind of gross?
Very gross. Kind of awful. But CNN actually dared to say, article in the Federalist, Dateline 2 days ago. CNN is warning that intelligence employees who get the axe are valuable. Those same employees might sell national secrets if they're fired. I got news. If they have a security clearance and they sell national secrets because they lost their job, they were probably a security risk to begin with. People don't become security risks immediately. Now, granted, they might say, well, I needed to pay the bills. No. If you were read on to the program and then you were read off to the program, you know what your parameters are. And if you're the kind of person who's going to go out there and sell state secrets because you're mad at Trump, then you were the kind of person who was going to sell state secrets anyway. That's all there is to that. But yeah, the propaganda press is just doing all it can right now to just make Trump look like a madman, exposing CIA secrets. I mean, really? That's what you're saying? Well, they've got security clearances. Well, what do you do when they retire? What do you do when they leave on their own volition? What do you do when they go in the hospital and they have to retire medically? What do you do when they go out on family medical leave or maternity leave? They carry the same clearance out the door with them no matter how they leave. And if you're going to say it's because of Trump they might sell state secrets, that's a character flaw. That's not a Trump flaw. My God, the hyperbole is just, you know what? I'm beyond it. I'm done with it.
At the same time, though, I think that's a sign that we're winning because that's all they got. All they got's the hyperbole, so.
Thank you for bringing me back around.
I know it's the hyperbole doesn't even deserve a valid response a lot of the times, I think.
I'm going to get you a piece of chocolate for that one. Take me to a break, JP. We'll take a break. We'll come right back. I got a few text messages before we get to the top of the hour, and I got to tell you, this thing that happened, though, it almost deserves a dipper by itself. The chat logs at the National Security Agency. Holy crap. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, making common sense like a superpower. Don't forget, coming up top of the hour, we're going to have the Grand Council. We'll come back to the next break with Jeff Poor, Dale Jackson joining me for our weekly round of the Grand Council, where we ping each other with questions and just see where the chips fall. It's actually gets pretty lively at times, so stand by for that. And let me just ask you this, JP. Oh, JP.
What's up?
JP,
Mm-hmm.
did you see the news about the chat rooms at the National Security Agency by
I did.
intelligence people?
I did.
They were not intelligent people, but they were intelligence people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even read some of the stuff out on the air. In fact, I know I can't.
Yeah.
We might be sanctioned by the FCC for this
Yeah.
if we tried to read it out on the air. So y'all, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, here's the deal. Story that broke, Christopher Rufo, who has been basically a great exposer, if you will, of all things woke. He works for, what's the institute he works for right now? It's not Heartland. Darn it. But Christopher Rufo is now with, not Heritage. Find out who Christopher Rufo is with. But he divulged that he had been given information regarding National Security Agency personnel maintaining sex chats on official government channels. They have an internal communication system, and they set up chat rooms. What we're also finding out now is it was somewhat sanctioned as a DEI thing because it gave people in the LGBTQ and transgender an arena to communicate at work. And what they really did was they got on there and they talked about their sexual fantasies. They talked about how their transgender ideologies, or for that matter, their transitions, were progressing and sharing back and forth what they really loved about their new bodies and all the things that and you look at it and go, my God, you're on government time using government servers in a classified environment. And this is not a little bit. This was a lot. It was to the point of makes you wonder, did they get any work done, if you know what I'm saying? Who's he work for?
Is it Manhattan Institute?
Manhattan Institute. Thank you very much. Christopher Rufo with Manhattan Institute. But there are right now over 100 people that are probably about to lose their job. So the first story I had came from the Federalist. Second story comes from Fox News, Dateline yesterday. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard now moves to terminate and revoke the security clearances of NSA employees tied to these explicit chat rooms. When I say they're explicit, like I said, I can't read out the things that are in these chat rooms. This was like the basest and grossest of stuff. This was like telling everybody what I did last night, or here's how you should try and do it. And just like, good gosh, y'all. Is there any level of professionalism that says that's okay in the work environment? Well, Tulsi Gabbard says no, and rightfully so. She said this. She said to Jesse Waters, we got to take a step back because this is barely scratching the surface. Said, when you see what these people were saying, this is Tulsi Gabbard, when you see what these people were saying, they were brazen, using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of really, really horrific behavior. She says, and they were brazen in doing it because when's the last time anybody held them accountable? Certainly not over the last 4 years, maybe not in the last 10 or 20 years. And we look at some of the biggest violations of the American people's trust in the intelligence community. She says it's all still being uncovered, more and more of it. But then she said these disgusting chat groups were immediately shut down when President Trump issued his executive order ending all the DEI insanity. What does that tell you? These were sanctioned chat groups. She says the chat logs in question stemmed from the DEI-focused groups on the NSA's Intel Link Messenger titled LGBTQIA and IC Pride working groups. Those aren't working groups. That's DEI agenda-driven, do it in your own spare time madness, get it out of our intelligence arena. My God. I know it's not everybody. I know it's not. It's a small microcosm of people. But it also shows you what was being actually allowed during the last administration. Go check out the articles yourself. Just don't read them in front of your kids.
Not just allowed, but promoted.
Oh, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Grand Council coming up.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome to hour number 3 on Hump Day. And we are halfway to the weekend, but we're also in the fourth 4 o'clock hour, which means it's time on Wednesday to do this thing we call the Grand Council, where I bring in 2 of my friends who talk radio. And we always have opinions. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, but we always love each other when it's done. So let me just call the roll for the Grand Council. Looking north to Huntsville, 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN's Cumulus Broadcasting Station up yonder, host of the Dale Jackson Show. Also does a whole lot of stuff with Yellowhammer News and even has a TV gig. Dale Jackson, are you there? You are indeed. Stand at ease. All right, so turning my eyes southward. From FM Talk 106.5 down yonder in Mobile, host of the Jeff Poor Show. Oh, by the way, the editor-in-chief for 1819 News and does some stuff with Land Yap and even Breitbart. Hey, Jeff Poor, are you there?
I am present.
You are indeed, and we're glad. All right, I pronounce a quorum. Hit it, man.
Assemble the Grand Council.
Ba-da. All right, fellers, you know the deal. Round 1, we just ask each other questions, see where it goes. Dale Jackson, you first.
Donald Trump has a new budget that they've gotten through the House. There's some talk about it's just a framework, guys.
Framework.
So it can be whatever you want it to be. Cuts to your favorite program are coming, tell us the Democrats, and it's still going to balloon the deficit and debt and all this other stuff. Trump himself says social programs will not be cut. They're going to focus on fraud. Can he get it done with just finding fraud, waste, and abuse, or are there going to have to be cuts eventually?
You talking about in the social programs?
Yes.
I don't think there's going to be true cuts in Medicaid and Medicare and in Social Security. I think what we're going to wind up seeing, though, is there's going to be a culling of the herd when it comes to the staffing. I think you're going to wind up seeing a reduction in the forced expansions that we were seeing from the Biden administration on the states. And I think you're going to also see there's a whole lot of fraud, like people getting checks that shouldn't, or for that matter, dead people still getting checks that their families are cashing for them. So I think you're going to see that be the focus, not this year. I don't think you're going to see this year be right out at the gate that they're going to want to actually cut entitlement programs. Jeff, your thoughts?
I mean, it wouldn't be this year, but I would be surprised in the next year, an election year, to get any kind of talks about cuts. So yeah, I think there'll be a reduction in staffing, and that's pretty easy. But when we start talking about where the real money is, which is some of these entitlements, is that going to fly? No, but they have to be real careful on the entitlement side, I think.
I agree, but I mean, what do you think, Dale? They gonna push Granny off the cliff?
They should. They should push all the grannies off the cliff. He said this. He was asked by a reporter, can you guarantee Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched? Trump, I've said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking that question. We're going to look for fraud. People are 200 years old and being sent checks. Some of them are actually being sent checks. So question asked, question answered. So question asked again tomorrow. Is that how that works?
It's apparently the answer is the same every day. But if you ask it over and over again, they expect a different answer. I guess so. Jeff Rowe, what question you got for us, man?
Speaking of grandmas, Governor Ivey, we learned last night that so the Alabama Federation of Republican Women, our mutual friend Tiffany Knoll, that runs that group, they were disinvited by the governor. It's legislative days down here in Montgomery. So women from all over the fruited plain of Alabama are here to learn more about the civic process. And part of that is a little reception tea at the governor's mansion. They do it every year. It's very exciting for them. Well, because this group, they have business meeting as well, was considering a resolution that was against the governor's veterans revamp. She disinvited them.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to pull it from their agenda. On a scale of 1 to 10 on the petty scale, where would you put this?
I'd put that about a 12.3. Yeah, and by the way, Jeff, you've been in Montgomery. Did you confirm that really did happen?
Really did happen, and
wow.
I'll tell you something else. Listen to this. The lieutenant governor has stepped up and is hosting an event at the Montgomery Country Club, I believe, for these women in place of that.
Well played, Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth. Well played. Look, that's absolutely one of the most petty things I've ever heard. By the way, the American Federation of Republican Women have supported her constantly. And when they show up I'll just tell you, my time down there, when they show up wearing their red jackets and red dresses, and it's legislative days for the AFRW, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for them. It's a big deal for the legislature. And yes, every year they go to the governor's mansion and they have a reception, and that's just been in the works forever. And for her to cancel it because they didn't like a piece of legislation that no one can figure out why she's got such a crazy desire to see passed, is the pettiest thing I think I've ever heard of, whether it be Democrat or Republican. Dale?
I've been to the governor's mansion. I've had the little tea with Kay Ivey. It's not really all that exciting. They didn't miss out on anything. But yeah, she's petty. I mean, that's clear. I mean, we all know that. Why is she doing this? I have absolutely no idea. The question is, does she know she's doing it?
That bothers me, and I cannot help but wonder if there were staff members who made this happen. But that means they don't want to expose her to the possibility of a discussion while she's there for a social tea. Listen, this is, someone needs to explain what her desire is for this bill. It does not rationalize. Any further thoughts on it, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to say, she's picking fights with veterans. She's picking fights with Republican women. Are there some orphans around? They better watch out because she's going to pick a fight with them next. This is totally tone deaf. He acts with impunity these days.
Okay. Let me jump in with a question to see if I can get this thing going here. Magic City Acceptance Academy. People around the nation get just completely gobsmacked when they find out that there's actually a charter school using public funds in the state of Alabama, of all places, that is absolutely designed to be a school for gay kids. And that's what it really is. Now, they say they're not, but they always push lifestyle choices over education at the Magic City Acceptance Academy. And now we find out, 1819 News, good job on you, that the former principal there had even offered to pay for gender assignment surgeries for kids himself. So that being said, how much longer can the Magic City Acceptance Academy keep its charter as a public charter school, knowing all that we know right now? Dale?
As long as lawmakers allow it to. That's it. And it seems like there's no real pressure on them to stop it. There was some talk about it early on, but you haven't heard anything about it. We got the Glock switch thing taken care of again, so maybe we can move on to that. But there hasn't been much talk about it, has there?
There hasn't been. That's what bugs me. Is are they going to take any action? Jeff, what are your thoughts on this, Magic City?
No, we try to get lawmakers to take the bait. A lot of them just don't want to talk on the record about it. It's very bizarre. And, I mean, the only way this is ever good, people are going to have to demand accountability here, but it seems to be in violation of the divisive concepts law that's on the books, and which just further illustrates what a toothless legislative effort that was. But they just operate, and I don't know. That's what it's going to take, but we haven't seen a lot of courage on this one.
We haven't, and I'll throw more of a piece in that. Going back to our conversation about Governor Ivey, she is by default, she is the head of the state Board of Education. She has a say in this, because the State Board of Education has its committee that approves charters, and this one was approved during Ivey's tenure, and she didn't say boo about it. And now here we are finding out that they've got drag shows for kids. They're all about lifestyle choice for the LGBTQ agenda, and now you got a staff member, I assume paid with public dollars, who's offering to pay for kids, mastectomies and things like that. It's madness, and it's got to stop. Somebody make it make sense.
You can't make this make sense, but it is reality, and it's just getting exposed. And they had book signings, like you said, and they had all this other stuff. It's just, It's absolutely amazing that's even going on here in the state of Alabama because other states don't do this. Why
No.
are we?
No, in fact, I think this may be the only one like it in the nation. Am I right in saying that? Does anybody know? I don't know if there's anybody else out there that has a school that even in its name sounds like a DEI glorification. Y'all know? I mean, is there anybody
I
else?
have no idea.
I don't think so. I think we're it.
Well, I mean, I don't know, guys. They probably don't need this in other places, but maybe in like the inner city of Birmingham, somebody decided there was a need for it. But that's just sort of I don't know. I have never heard of anything like this.
No, ever. And here we are, red state Alabama, Republican supermajority, and nobody wants to talk about it. All right, we're taking a break. That's round one, the Grand Council with Jeff Poor from FM Talk 1065 and 1819 News, Dale Jackson from WVNN up yonder in Huntsville and Yellowhammer News, and just little old me, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades. All right, we're going back to round number 2 on the Grand Council with Jeff Poor, Dale Jackson. Round 2, first question. Dale Jackson, what you got?
All right, former Senator Williams and a lawyer, I believe.
Oh, Lord.
The state of Tennessee recently won a legal battle where the Supreme Court said, we're not taking up this drag queen ban.
Yeah.
The lower court said it's good to go. Different states have passed different things. Are we done with obese men in women's swimsuits covered in sequins gyrating in front of children in libraries? Are we officially allowed to ban that now? Is that a across the country thing, or is that just Tennessee that got lucky?
That was Tennessee's Skermeti case, and it related to Tennessee law. So it was a case of being appealed up to the circuit from a Tennessee decision. Since the Supremes decided not to take it up, that means Tennessee law stands. I think we're going to see the same thing, though, materializing all over. I would not be a bit surprised to find that eventually the decision has to get rendered from the Supreme Court of the United States saying something to the effect of, if state law says it, we find no grievance there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But so you're going to wind up seeing drag shows in Illinois and New York and in California, but you won't see them in Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi. But right now, my recollection is that case was about the Skermeti case relating to Tennessee. Jeff, if you know different.
I guess the premise of my question is that lays the groundwork for every state that wants to do it to get the green light to do so.
Oh, they see. Okay, yeah, there's 2 versions of precedent. One is precedent where they actually rule. The other is precedent when they decline to rule, which means, hey, we've got a court that's favorable to this being left in place. So sometimes saying nothing is saying a lot. And in this case, we know at least under the current court that these cases will very likely stand, at least on the merits of what was being appealed. So there's that. Jeff, weigh in on that if you want to.
Let me weigh in with a question. Does it go all the way to the Supreme Court? And is there a chance the Supreme Court lets us down here? I don't know. But they've done that before in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be how it's couched. I mean, right now, this is a matter of legislated. I mean, if this had been an executive order from the governor, it might not have stood up. If this had been something that picked on one population base over another. But see, right now, there's no protection in the law for the gay agenda like there is for somebody of a gender or like a racial demographic. And so I think that the court declined because this meets all the standards it needed to. If you had one that didn't, like if they said only as to black people, then it wouldn't stand up. But right now, I think this court is going to at least stay on the money. That's my thought. All right, next question. Jeff, what you got?
Media death watch here. We've seen Lester Holt. We've seen the much publicized Joy Reid. We could go Jim Acosta. I mean, there's a bunch of names that were kind of quasi-known names in that landscape. Who you got next?
Go ahead. I'm looking for Whoopi to be forced into retirement. That would make my day. But right now, I think she's still got a contract. But no, I think that right now The View is outliving its usefulness. People are realizing how off the rocker those people really are, and they need to counterbalance that a little bit. I think you'll see somebody on there get replaced with somebody who's at least more moderate. Whoopi will probably still anchor the table, at least for now. Gone are the days when Barbara Walters seemed to have a little more command of the issues, but on The View. Dale, your thoughts?
Well, I would think The View's going to be fine. It's a network program. I'm sure it's not that expensive to do with just a rotating cast of general malcontents and nobodies. I don't know how much that could actually cost. Yeah, your problem still remains on, I think, MSNBC and CNN, where you have a bunch of names, of huge staffs, and not that big of audiences. That's your real problem. Who goes next? I don't know. I think we were still waiting for like a big shoe to drop at CNN that still has never come. Was Jim Acosta a guy who does something like 11 p.m. the guy, or was he's in the middle of the day? Was he the biggest guy to go there, or is there someone else? It's got to be there, right?
Well, they brought Brian Stelter back, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But
they got rid of Oliver Darcy. They brought him back to fill that job. Okay. They got rid of Oliver Darcy.
Your best friend.
What big names left it? What's left to CNN? They're not going to get rid of Anderson Cooper. It's just he's like the franchise tag on him. the same probably applies to like a Rachel Maddow. I would look at like I think like the name I think no basis of any research or evidence, like Nora O'Donnell or somebody like that who got signed to a big deal, was going to be a big deal, and just kind of was like not great, and they still had to eat that contract. Well, watch for names like that. I don't think you're going to see a marquee name. But, like, Chuck Todd left NBC the other day. Did anybody even notice?
No.
Like, you see these names that are, like, were household names in this world are going by the wayside. And, you're going to see more of this over time.
What about Caitlin Collins?
She's
Nah.
cheap. She works cheap. You're not going to get rid of her. You got to look at names that are, like, people who have been with the network at the time when cable news was really pumping and knocking, or even broadcast news. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see, I think, that era of personalities go.
I think you're going to start seeing, though, what I think they might do is moderate the guests more and make the liberal commentators have to deal with a conservative viewpoint, which they don't often do. In that vein, let me ask you this real quick as we're about to go with 30 seconds. Is Dan Bongino going to move to Huntsville, Alabama and run the FBI headquarters south? What do you think there, Dale?
I hope so. I can't wait to hang out with him.
What do you think, Jeff?
Hey, I got like Dale and Dan Bongino buddy comedy. I just can't wait for that.
The deputy director will be across the hall in Washington, D.C. He'll be in D.C.
I heard you're going to be his director of communications is what I heard.
Hey, if he asks, I'll serve.
Oh, man, spots are opening up everywhere. All right, you guys, appreciate you. That's the Grand Council with Jeff Poor from FM Talk 106.5 down yonder in Mobile, host of his own show, The Jeff Poor Show. Oh, by the way, with 1819 News, Dale Jackson up yonder in Huntsville on WVNN, host of The Dale Jackson Show, and with Yellowhammer News, and little old me, the Grand Council. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I am saying this show goes from like Huntsville all the way on back to Chattanooga. And I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, big old swatches and patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right. Is Jeff on the phone? Jeff Rowe from Indiana's on the phone. Hey, man, how you doing?
Doing real well. Got my lunch and got fueled up, and I'm heading up the road.
All right. Now, pray tell, is your lunch going to be fried fish and pickled eggs from a truck stop?
No, I just come out of the same place I met you that one day.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Got a limited roller grill there. That's pretty much it.
Well, good deal. Well, then I know exactly where you are. But all right, man. What's on your mind? What do you think about all this stuff?
You know, you're talking about getting rid of these government workers and everything. The first ones I would get rid of, according to what I'm seeing that's actually working for the government, we got to get rid of the personnel managers because they apparently don't know how to hire anybody.
Okay, you're broad brushing again, though, man. It's not all government employees, just some.
Oh, I know, but the some that got in there had to get past the personnel directors, and they go, oh, well, let's see what your history is there. Oh, you don't know how to do this, don't know how to do this, and you haven't got no work history. And then they started looking at the panel as they shouldn't look at is if their sex or their color or their age.
Yeah.
And that needs to be blinded, I believe, because we need to hire everybody based upon what skills they have and what they can present to the government.
Let me tell you something that happens.
Hiring somebody to be hiring somebody.
In the latter years of my time in military service, they did away with what's known as the DA photo. That's the Department of the Army. Your official photo that shows, and for years it was always the photo showed you in your dress uniform. It was an official taken photo. You had to stand a certain way in front of a certain backdrop, an official photo made, and they could tell whether you were fat and out of shape or whatever else. But the fear was people were seeing your skin color, and people were getting overlooked because they were passing by the photos of somebody who was black or whatever else. So they did away with the DA photo. But now that we turn around and DEI hires people based on demographics and retains them based on demographics, while in the military, we were told you couldn't even have a photo.
Yeah. But, these people that are losing their jobs, this could be a godsend because how many times have you been fired in your life?
It's happened.
Have you ever, did you step up to a better job or did it get worse?
Oh, every single time it wound up being the best thing. I mean, I say everything like it hadn't happened a lot. But I can tell you this, I look back on the time that was very painful when it happened, and I realized later on I'm so glad it did. But I've also been the one who had to let people go. And there are times when you let them go for cause, but then there's also times when you recognize there's just nothing there for you, and you got to make a decision.
Right, and that's how the world works. We can't put the government in a different bubble just because it's government. We got to, it's like I say, Trump's a businessman. And the government has to operate as a business if we're going to survive.
Well, it does. That's why I've been using the word right-sizing. That's all we're doing. We're right-sizing government. We're not downsizing. We're not reduction and forcing. We're right-sizing government. We're bringing it back to a place of efficiency, and we're getting rid of the excess. And yes, that is painful, and I'm sorry that it is, but it's also reality. It's what we have to deal with.
Yeah, it's like how many people work for Rightside Media, if you don't mind.
There's a few.
How many people do you employ?
We got a few. We got a handful.
How come you don't have 50?
I wish I could have 50. If I had 50, I'd be in tall cotton, brother. I just enjoy myself and not have to do a lot of the things that I do.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be profitable at 50, would you?
No, in fact, I wouldn't be able to sustain it. I mean, there's this reality there. But
so that's the same thing the government has to accept. You know, we've got 50 when we need 5, so they need to cut the fat, and the 5 that's there need to be compensated for their work, and they need to step up and you know, be appreciated, basically.
Yeah. Look at USAID, 10,000 employees down to 672. And that's just where it is.
Yeah, that's probably 600 more than what they need, I imagine.
All right, man. Be safe on the road. We appreciate you.
Have a good one, Phil.
See you, buddy. Yeah, he's got great points. Let me get a few text messages, and then I tell you what. Let me do this. I want to. You got that audio clip number 2? This was a whole dipper I had set up for this. I'm not going to get a chance to get it all in, but there's a portion of it that I've got to get in. I don't know if y'all heard what happened in Maine. Phil, why do we care about Maine? Because it's a battlefield. Maine is a battlefield of culture right now. Maine is the state where the governor was in the meeting with Donald Trump, and he called her out in front of everybody else about the fact that she is refusing to let go of transgenders in sports. And she said, and he said, well, then, you know, you're just not going to get federal funds. She said, I'll see you in court. And he said, yes, you will, and it'll be an easy one. So that same Maine governor, we then discovered the next day, there was a video of her dancing on stage at a drag show in which kids were present. Oh, okay. So apparently she's got her own agendas. And now what we're also seeing is what just happened in Maine. Now, listen, I believe, and I think you said it earlier in the show, we're winning. We are winning on this. We are winning against transmania. We are. We are the right, the traditional values, the conservatives, the Christians are winning against this transgender ideology that has turned into transmania. It's like a cult. Well, what's amazing to me is what is happening in Maine. I've got an audio clip we're going to play here for you. Maine State Representative Laurel Libby, she's a Republican. Laurel Libby put a post on her personal Facebook page taking issue with a Maine high school student who's a transgender who competed in a girls' track and field and won medals over girls and then thought it was a big doings, right? This had been a male athlete last year, now claiming to be a female athlete this year. It's really a guy competing in girls' sports. And so Representative Laurel Libby, on behalf of girls in her state, said this is wrong. And she posted a picture of the medal ceremony, which was a public image, by the way. And the left went crazy. The left in Maine decided, you know what? That's not good enough. We want her head. And so she was actually censured. I kid you not. She was censured by the state house. And then I wish you could watch the video with me, but you'll get to hear it. She was called up in front of the state house dais to stand in front of the Speaker of the House and be told that until she publicly apologizes, she will not be allowed to cast a vote or to speak on the floor of the House that she was elected to represent her people in. It's maddening. So what I've got is this is a local newscast. Yeah. It's kind of long, though. How long is this thing?
It's about 3 minutes.
About 3 minutes. So I may stop you at one point. All right. But I want to play this for you because this is happening in the United Free States of America, that a state representative elected by her constituents is being told she's not even allowed to speak or cast a vote on their behalf because she offended the sensibilities of a transgender community that is like a cult in Maine right now. Go ahead and play it.
Tonight, the Maine House formally censored a state representative after she drew national attention for a Facebook post that singled out a transgender high school athlete in Maine. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sam Olson. Representative Laurel Libby's post criticized Maine's policy of allowing transgender athletes to participate in girls' sports. News Center Maine's Donovan Lynch has the latest developments from the State House.
And when the woke left can't silence women, they cancel them.
A fierce debate in the Maine legislature as a lawmaker is disciplined for a viral social media post.
I think it will be very clear that the standard is to not post photos of minors as part of political fodder.
On Tuesday, the Maine House of Representatives.
That is such crap. Posting pictures of minors as political fodder, that's your excuse. What you're really saying is we're protecting transgenders competing in girls' sports. because this was a public image. It was a medal ceremony. The kid stood up there for the photographers to take their picture. Play it.
Representatives moving to censure Republican State Representative Laurel Libby for sharing images and the name of a transgender high school athlete in Maine. The lawmaker criticizing the teenager's victory in a girls' track and field event.
Boys participating in girls' sports is not fair.
Libby receiving strong support from her own party against the censure.
She's actually practicing freedom of speech and standing up for girls in Maine.
With one GOP lawmaker drawing scrutiny for his language.
People maybe should have thought about approaching the good representative before we do a lynching.
The member will defer.
During
All right,
debate,
stop a second. This is the most sensitive group I've ever heard. These are elected officials. He said before they do a lynching, it's a and then he was told he basically had to correct his language. And if you could see his face, he looked at the speaker, was like, shrugged his shoulders, like, whatever. All right, keep playing it.
Democrats offering a fierce rebuke of the lawmaker from Auburn.
No child designed these rules, and no child deserves to be targeted by any adults who are upset about them.
That stance drawing support from Republican Ken Fredette, though he ultimately urged his colleagues to reject the censure.
Photos, images, statements of somebody else's children to make a point. I think that's dead wrong.
Gender dysphoria on a pedestal. And
The clash between House Democrats and their Republican counterparts coming to a head as the censure passed, and Speaker Ryan Fecteau invited Libby to the front of the chamber to apologize.
This is where the Speaker of the House called her up in front of all the other members of the House and had her stand in front of the Speaker's dais and tell her she had to apologize or she would not be allowed to vote or speak. Play it.
Apologize for the post. She declined.
I will not apologize for speaking up for Maine girls who are having their voices silenced.
Well, the debate will be had on the policy issue. The question before us is not related to that. The question before us is the post appropriate? This legislature has determined that it's not.
Now, because Representative Libby did not issue an apology, she won't be able to vote or speak on the floor until she changes course. In Augusta, Donovan Lynch, News Center, Maine.
That's unbelievable to me. Stop it right there. That's unbelievable to me. The very idea, y'all. This is the Marxist state of Maine. This is where freedom of expression goes to die. Apparently, this is where the cult of transgenderism has taken such root that they will tell an elected official they are no longer allowed to speak on behalf of their constituents. And what they also declined to acknowledge was that there were girls who lost medals that day to a transgender who are not allowed to have someone speak for them, but the transgender kid is. And that is a sick set of circumstances. That is a maddening, sickening, disgusting set of circumstances. And the Speaker of the House of Maine ought to be ashamed. He absolutely ought to be ashamed. Got to go to a break. We'll take it to a break right now. Tell our caller if he can hang on during the break. We'll get him right when we come back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Love me some Black Crowes intro, man. That is one of my favorite bumps. I got to listen to that every time it just plays. Hey, let me jump on the phones real quick because he held on during the break, and I appreciate that. Sparky from Harvest. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Hey, Phil and JP. Great show. Great show. Two things. I'll make the first one very brief.
Yeah.
I think Maine is going to be one of the last entities of all corporations, states, and governments dragging their nails across the tarmac, trying to hold on to the DEI transgender nonsense as though it would somehow be a winner in elections for them.
Yeah.
Everybody else has decided it's not.
Yeah.
To follow on Jeff Rowe's comments about Rightside Radio, the government right-sizing, I want to pay a compliment to you guys, to you.
Oh.
You and JP, you have a chemistry that I think appeals to the viewer because you're a real guy and you're a straight-up guy, and there's a quality to, I don't know, over the years, Boomer, Butters and Lee, JP, that's kind and genuine, and I think there's a symbiosis. There's a chemistry there that appeals, and it makes people want to listen and view day after day. Is that did you get lucky hiring the right guys, or is there something about you as a leader, a servant leader, or just intuition? But it's great, man, and I appreciate it. I tune in all the time, and
wow.
And God bless you.
Well,
Do a
Sparky,
great
that blesses me like you have no idea, man. And thank you very much.
Yeah,
and,
thank you, Sparky.
That is huge. Hey, but you know what though? You and all y'all are the reason why we do it. Because if we sat here and just talked into a microphone and nobody listened, it'd be a whole different story. But thank you, man. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, and just when you listen to a lot of popular radio and TV, there's an artifice, there's a slick veneer, and you guys don't have it, but somehow you gel. And kudos to you. God bless you.
Oh man, well keep our feet to the fire, brother. But thank you. That's good stuff. That is. I can go all day on that. All right. My day just improved. I came in the studio all grumpy today, and the show made me feel better. How about that?
Lawyer Phil came in.
Lawyer. You saw it.
Yeah. Yep.
Unfortunately, Alicia saw it too. But Butters just checking in. Butters listening out there. He says, thank you, Sparky. Tom with all the kids says servant leadership was pushed hard in ROTC back in the mid-'90s. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Gary from Decatur says, I knew there was a reason why we moved away from Maine when I was 12 years old and have never been back since. He said, really tough to say I was born there now if I have to. Wow. Jerry from Decatur says, Phil, the left never has been for the benefit of the kids. If they were, they'd be pro-life and abortion would end and trans surgery would be appalling. Airborne. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you. John from Huntsville has the grades in. He says Dale Jackson and Jeff Poore get an A+ for their equally fantastic performances. Phil gets a solid A. But I do have to say I disagree with a lot of his Ukraine-Russia comments. Otherwise, did a great job. Which means today's winner is obviously JP with an A++. There you go. Congratulations, and I'm pretty sure your new Auburn groupies are very proud of you.
I hope they are.
Yeah, in case y'all didn't know, JP's got groupies. You want to play that sound? You get that? Play it. Just play it right now. There you go. JP on sports! Awesome. Sorority girls at Auburn screaming JP on sports.
I'm gonna have to use that for a lot of stuff.
Dude,
keep that in the file.
Just keep that in your phone. So like when you're out meeting people, you say, hey, I got a sound effect. You want to hear?
I got some Auburn groupers here.
And John from Harvest reminds us, that Copper was on the show at one point too. Yes, she was, and Big Rig. Yep, absolutely. So all said and done, it's been a great show. And listen, there's a bunch of y'all out there right now that I know you're sitting on pins and needles, aggravated that the public employee sector, that you thought you went to work every day and it was quiet and nobody ever say anything, and now they're saying something. Just know this. I will say over and over again that I am absolutely 100% fully aware and convinced that that not all public employees have problems, but some do. and they need to go. Send the email. And if your boss says don't send the email, then send the email to your boss and let them be the one who decides. But the reality is, if you're proud of your job, make it known. All that to say, hey, there's a whole lot more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.